Welcome to the collection of the wildest and craziest AITA Reddit stories of all time. From wild betrayals to shocking twists, these tales will leave you questioning who is really in the wrong. Let's dive in together. The first story for this collection is from Doria. AITA for not letting my fiance play dad to his nephew, who's his biological son from sperm donation. I don't know if this is the right sub for this, but I need advice because my engagement is literally hanging in the balance right now. My fiancé donated sperm to his brother and his now ex-wife because they were having issues conceiving naturally. The wife was checked by multiple doctors, but his brother refused to get checked because he didn't want people to think he was less of a man, so he roped my fiancé into secretly donating sperm. I wasn't comfortable with the idea, but my fiancé comes from a close-knit family, so I knew I wouldn't be able to convince him not to help his brother, so I didn't even try. His brother was supposed to raise the child as his own, but he couldn't cope with the fact that the baby wasn't biologically his, so he divorced his wife before she even gave birth. Ever since my fiancé has been supporting her financially because his brother left her with nothing, and she doesn't work. To an extent, I was okay with this, because she's probably the biggest victim in all of this, and my fiancé's brother is a huge jackass for putting her in this situation. But it did make me uncomfortable when he was buying her gifts to cheer her up, or going to doctor appointments with her. She's since given birth, and now my fiancé has decided he'll raise the baby with her because he doesn't want the child to grow up fatherless. Also, a big reason I think he wants to raise the baby is because his brother has made it seem like she was unfaithful to his family, so they're questioning whether the baby is a part of their family or not, and my fiancé doesn't want his nephew to be shunned. I'm completely against this because it was bad enough that I had to accept another woman birthing his child before me, but I don't want to be a stepmother. The agreement was that my fiancé would be only an uncle to the baby, which is something I can cope with. Anything more is too much. I know this isn't an easy situation for the ex, and I sympathize with her, but this isn't my problem. She shouldn't have let her husband push her into something she wasn't comfortable with, and my fiancé has already done more than enough for her. AITA? OP is the AH for her discomfort with her fiancé playing dad to his nephew, but she is disregarding her fiancé's deep emotional connection to the child and his desire to support his nephew, which cannot be justified. For this, I would rate OP 0.1 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump onto the next story, from Marsgoo, 2020, AITA. If I set boundaries with my mother and threaten to cut her out of my life if she doesn't respect them. I, 24 transgender male, have always had issues with communicating with my mom. And it was all right in high school, and everything, but lately, unresolved feelings have come to the surface. To get an idea of everything, I grew up with divorced parents, and my mom had my brother, 30M, with someone else 6 years before she had me. For a majority of my childhood, despite her getting remarried when I was 3, it was just me, mom, and my brother in the house. The man she was with was a recovering alcoholic, and he would take his anger out on us by yelling and emotionally abusing us. Well, when I was 12 and my brother was 18, they divorced, and my brother enlisted in the Air Force. So, I went from being the youngest to the only child. During the time they were getting a divorce, that was really the only time I really had my mother's undivided attention. It was the only time I felt that she really paid attention to me and cared about how I was feeling. When I was 14, she got together with my stepdad, who had 3 kids that were still in school and all younger than me, and when their mom had a mental break, they came and lived with us. All of a sudden, I was the oldest sibling, with the responsibility of looking out for my younger siblings, and I was just starting high school. To make matters worse, the following year, my grandmother was diagnosed with stage 4 lung bone cancer. I did what I could to help with my siblings and support my mom emotionally, but it feels like she never really saw a lot of what I did. That Christmas, even though I had asked for a tablet or something to do my artwork that I do, we all got a Wii U, because my younger brothers expressed interest in games that were coming out for the system. I ended up still getting sketchbooks and canvases to do art, but the boys really got what they wanted, and my younger sister ended up getting a ukulele that she never really learned how to play. That year for my birthday was spent in the hospital with my dying grandmother, who passed away only a few short weeks later. The next year I had asked for similar things and a few games for the Xbox my dad had handed down to me when he'd gotten a new one. I got one of the games from Santa, but not the drawing tablet. My little brothers ended up getting a Nintendo Switch that year. This continued for the next few years with my mom and stepdad giving me and two of the younger siblings a 3 Decaiskins due to one of the boys already having one, and I got none of what was really on my list. My 18th birthday, the only thing I got a 6-pack of snack cupcakes and a small emoji balloon on a stick. I had even had an ROTC competition on my birthday, and they didn't even show up to watch me compete because one of my siblings had something going on. My grandmother, on my father's side, and my grandfather let me take a few friends out to dinner that night. I'd moved out of our 2-bedroom apartment when I was 16 because there were 6 of us, and I, still presenting as female at the time, was sharing a room with my younger brother, who was only 3 years younger than me. Around 2 months before graduating from high school, my mom asked me what I wanted for a graduation present, and I told her that all I wanted was to go on a trip with her. I didn't care where or what we did. I just wanted a vacation with just my mom, and no worries about our personal lives. I graduated nearly 7 years ago now, and have yet to go on a trip with her. After I graduated, I went to an acting showcase and got a scholarship to acting school. I had been active in theater in high school and was constantly told I wasn't good enough, so this was a big thing. Every time I brought it up, it didn't seem like my mom believed I could actually make it through the school and get a degree. I did, but it was rough. Before going to school, I was in a world premiere musical in my hometown about a historical event in the town, and while they had to take care of my stepdad's parents, who were going through medical issues at the time, it still hurt to see them at a gas station, and I reminded her of the show, and she flat out told me that she had forgotten about it, despite me posting on Facebook about it for weeks beforehand. Shortly before leaving for school, I had a bad depressive episode, and nearly myself, thinking that I was just going to constantly be in the background with people I cared about. I went through a partial hospitalization program that helped me come up with coping skills for my mental health that I've used to this day. Because I was still on my mom's health insurance, she got the bill for it when I was in New York and called me about it. I told her just bits and pieces because I was ashamed, and she only ended up yelling at me, and because I still felt that she didn't really care about me, I limited contact with her then and only focused on getting through school. On my 20th birthday, I sat in my kitchen in my college apartment with my roommate cooking behind me while I was on the phone with her and listened to her yell at me about not communicating for an hour and a half, which ended with me in tears. I somehow made it through acting school during COVID and everything and came out as transgender between the 2 school years. When I told her, she said she still loved me and she constantly still tries to use the right pronouns and my name. But it's hard for her. I don't get upset because both her and my stepdad are constantly trying. This last year, I thought we were getting better with our relationship, especially when my grandfather on her side was diagnosed with gastroesophageal cancer and nearly died from a routine operation. We communicated and helped each other through it, and everything seemed fine. I ended up with some health problems from work, and due to the runaround I got from them, I ended up quitting my job. Recently, a new game came out that doesn't work on my Xbox One, and I asked for help from both her and my father to try and get a PS5 so I could play games with my friends in my free time and relax, especially with me in training to be an EMT with the goal of eventually being a paramedic. I need things to do with everything I am going to experience. Well, I experienced a bad call on a ride along this past weekend and called my mom for advice on how to adjust to it since she's a nurse. During the call, she flat out told me she was done getting game systems for us kids, so I shouldn't even bother asking her for it. And the only kid that's getting one is my youngest brother, because that's what he asked for as a graduation present. I don't want to have to cut my mom out of my life. I really don't. She's the only parent who's always been in my life consistently, because my father couldn't handle being a good dad to me and my 2 oldest brothers from him, but he's at least come back and tried to make up for everything. I just feel like my mom never listens to me and has constantly pushed me to the side to worry about the other kids, because I never really had problems in school or when I was younger. I plan to sit down with her and set boundaries with her that my current roommate told me I should do and explain to her my feelings. The only problem is that when I do bring this stuff up to her, she either shuts down and starts yelling, or she just denies everything and gaslights me. And I know that if I set these boundaries, she'll send everyone my way to try and get me to see reason and lift these boundaries, which will only give me one option, and that is to cut her out completely. But that would also mean cutting out people important to me and risk a relationship with my brother's kids. So, AITA, if I do this? OP is not the AH for setting boundaries with her mom. In fact, it is a healthy step, especially when the parent repeatedly dismisses her feelings and needs. OP has endured years of emotional neglect, and it's understandable to demand respect in their relationships. If boundaries lead to distance, it's unfortunate but necessary for OP's well-being. So, OP is not an AH, and I would rate her 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. As for OP's mom, she is an AH for her behavior towards OP. So, I would rate OP's mom 3.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump on to the next story from HMR 131. AITA for wanting to leave my boyfriend because he has 0 nurturing qualities? I, 24F, come from a family of medical professionals, so nurturing and care are hardwired into me. My 28M boyfriend comes from a very rural family of country folk, to put it lightly, where injury or illness was basically ignored or not taken seriously, and everyone was pretty much told to suck it up or rub some dirt in it. We've been together for almost 4 years. To preface, I have never expected to be taken care of and rarely ask for help unless I physically cannot do something on my own. I suffer from many debilitating chronic illnesses that affect my mobility, and my mother's side of the family has a rare gene expression that results in pretty much all of us getting some form of cancer at some point. My chronic illnesses, POTS and EDS, result in me either passing out or almost passing out frequently, and my joints dislocate often just from walking, getting out of bed, standing up, lifting, etc. He was so caring the first few months of our relationship and seemed so concerned every time I had a flare-up, but that soon turned to me rarely asking for help, because I could tell he was bothered by my helplessness at times. In 2023, I was diagnosed with brain cancer and had brain surgery in November of that year to remove the tumor, but unfortunately, it left me completely blind on the right side and left the right side of my body very weak due to the tumor's location. My boyfriend stayed with me in the hospital while I was in the ICU recovering, but showed virtually no emotion towards any of the complications. I lived with him at the time, so he knew he'd be my primary caretaker following surgery, and his work was next door to our house, so his boss said he could take as many breaks as needed to check in or help me without any effect on his pay. My orders were minimal standing and absolutely no lifting for 2 weeks, and as much rest as I could get. After 3 days, he seemed completely bothered any time I needed help. If I forgot something in another room and had already laid back down, he would huff and puff about having to grab something for me. It got to the point where I ignored doctor's orders and was doing almost everything myself because seeing him annoyed by helping me broke my heart. Meanwhile, I was also adjusting to being newly half-blind and coping with the loss of my future career. I was in veterinary school and couldn't complete the graduation lab requirements with low vision. I actually brought it up to him a few weeks later, and he got better. Afterwards, the depression and grief of what had happened to me set in, and I admittedly became very depressed and wasn't taking very good care of myself or picking up after myself, as all I wanted to do was lay in bed. I was mourning an entire life I had dreamed for myself, and mental health care is hard to come by where we lived. He confronted me about all of this, and word for word said, "It's been 2 weeks. You need to get over it." We had a big argument, and he apologized a few days later. I gave him the benefit of the doubt, as I knew it had to be hard on him too, since he never expected to become my caretaker and sole breadwinner for the foreseeable future, so suddenly and so soon. Especially when he had never really been nurtured growing up since his parents were so rough around the edges and had a very pull-yourself-up-by-the-bootstraps type of mentality. Eventually, I found a temporary tech job I could do from home, and I ironically ended up pulling myself up by my bootstraps and got back into a good daily routine as not to burden him with my depression. I ended up moving in with my parents again so that they could help out with my care and driving me around since I can't do so anymore with my vision loss. Well, here we are a year later, and I just had a tubal ligation 6 days ago after deciding there was no way I was passing cancer and a slew of other illnesses down to children. This was a very difficult decision. With my chronic condition, I don't heal well, and the surgery resulted in unexpected complications and severe pain. He couldn't come over until the weekend because of his new work schedule, but he spent the weekend here with me, and once again, I felt zero empathy from him. I'm not allowed to lift, and I'm still in a ton of pain, and every asked favor felt like pulling teeth. I even almost fainted at one point and vomited, and when I came out of the bathroom, he didn't react. No, "Are you okay?" or "Can I get you anything?" I was miffed at that point and said, "Can you please move so I can sit down and not pass out?" Since he was taking up the bed, and he asked me why I was suddenly being such a brat. So, I laid out how I was feeling, and he responded by saying how I love to point out when he's not doing something right. This was because I brought up how he treated me after last year's procedure. I love him so much, but I don't think he'll ever be someone I can lean on for support, considering my chronic illnesses will lead to more medical complications in the future, and I'm considering leaving. It breaks my heart having to consider this at this time of year. We've had lots of up and downs in our relationship, but this is what is weighing on me the most heavily right now. So, AITA and reading too much into his lack of care, or am I justified in my feelings? OP is not the AH for leaving her boyfriend because her chronic health issues require emotional and physical support, which her boyfriend consistently fails to provide. Her feelings of neglect are valid, especially considering the lack of empathy during major surgeries and ongoing struggles. Let's now jump on to the next story from Blue_ for you. AITA for not spending time with my BF's family? I 26F and my boyfriend 30M have been dating for a year and a couple months now. We met on a dating app and hit it off on the first date. We made things official after a few dates, and I genuinely love this man. He's invited me on trips with his family, convinced me to quit my miserable full-time job and go back to college, and encouraged me to seek mental help. Another thing I should mention is he's helped me out on multiple occasions with bills after I quit my full-time job. I genuinely love this man and want to spend the rest of my life with him. The only issue is his parents, specifically his mother. So, a little background about myself before I get to the part about my boyfriend's parents. I've never been good with money. While yes, I was working a full-time job, I didn't save much money, but I wasn't falling short on bills and never missed credit card payments and my stock investment. My parents created a savings account for me when I was young and put money in it so I'd have it for college, but I never touched it until my boyfriend convinced me to go back to college to get my degree. On to the parents. So, I've always enjoyed spending time with my BF's parents. They've been good to me and always went out of their way to make me feel welcomed. Sure, we've had our issues, but other than that, I thought everything was okay. I'll start with the first incident I've had with his mom. His parents own a lake house in another state, and they usually take 2-week trips for the summer there. My BF had convinced me to quit my full-time job and apply for the fall semester and to come with them on their trip. He told me to quit on the spot, but I wanted to maintain a good relationship with my ex-job and put my 2 weeks in and missed the first week of my BF and his family's trip. My BF offered to fly me into the state and pick me up from the airport, so I agreed. He paid for my flight and Ubered to the airport, and I eventually made it to the house with him. Things were going well, although I wasn't making much conversation with his family. I'm not trying to make excuses, but I hadn't been dating my boyfriend for very long when this trip happened, so I didn't know his parents very well, and this was the first time I had met his aunt and uncle. I have bad anxiety, which my boyfriend knows about, and was taking a new medication at the time. Another thing about my boyfriend is he's a huge pothead. He takes bong rips consistently throughout the day, and he was smoking on the trip, and I asked if I could have one of the edibles he brought with him. He said yes, and I only ate half of it. I've taken edibles before and have smoked weed multiple times in the past, and didn't think my reaction would be bad, but it was. I'm going to be honest, I don't remember much from that day, but I ended up passing out and missing an important dinner with his whole family, and my boyfriend expressed how his family was wondering where I was the whole time. I apologized and said I've never had a reaction like that, and I thought everything was fine after that. The next day, my boyfriend came to me, and we had a sit-down, and he told me he was having doubts about our relationship because I wasn't spending enough time with his family on the trip, and I had missed an important dinner. I apologized but also won't lie and say I didn't make excuses for myself. I told him about my anxiety, the new medication I was taking, and that I've taken edibles before, and this reaction was new to me. I told him I'd put my effort into spending time with his family, and I kept true to my word. For the rest of the trip, I pushed myself to spend time with his family. A little background about my BF's aunt and uncle. They're both extremely conservative, anti-vax and anti-mental health. I've heard the uncle straight up say, "Chinese people are scum," which is absolutely disgusting to say. Regardless, I tried to bond with everyone and keep the peace. Eventually, the trip ended, and my boyfriend seemed happy with how things ended up. The second incident I had was with his mother and the family dog. My BF and his family used to have a dog, and he would always get into the garbage, so they usually keep it in a cabinet and keep a little step stool in front of the cabinet door to stop the dog from getting into the trash. At one point, I'd used the garbage and noticed the ladder wasn't there. I looked for it, but couldn't find it, so I assumed someone was using it and left it at that. His mom is kind short, so I guess in my mind it made sense that she might be using it because I've seen her use it before to reach things on top shelves. Well, the dog got into the garbage and my BF's mom was pissed. I apologized and explained that the ladder wasn't there while I was using the garbage and that I tried to look for it, but she wouldn't even look at me or speak to me. My BF and I went downstairs and I started crying because I thought I'd ruined things with my BF's mom. My boyfriend tried to calm me down, but in the end, I just left. His mother sent me a text saying she wasn't mad at me, but her behavior during the situation made me think otherwise. Regardless, I decided to let the whole thing go, and when I saw her next time we both pretended like nothing happened. The third instance was fairly recently. It was my BF's sister's birthday, and I came over. I wished his sister happy birthday and spoke to her for a bit, and then went downstairs to my boyfriend's room to hang out with him. His parents ordered pizza for the party, and we all came upstairs to eat. There were a lot of people there. IMO. It was my BF's parents, my BF, me, the sister, and the sister's boyfriend. They were all talking and making conversation, and I tried to join in as much as I could. I guess at some point, the noise of the conversation and kitchen overwhelmed me, and I just stared off into space for a bit. For reference, I struggle with noise. I've been working with doctors to figure out why this is, and I've been told by multiple doctors that I may have autism. It's gotten so bad that I sometimes wear headphones to block out the noise, and my boyfriend knows this. Anyways, the dinner ends and I head downstairs to do homework. It's final season, and I wanted to study and do some homework in my BF's room downstairs in the basement. At one point, while I was studying, my boyfriend asked me if I wanted some cake, and I said yes, and offered to come upstairs to grab it with him, but he insisted I focus on my homework. Eventually, he brings down the cake, and I think everything is okay. A couple days after the party, my boyfriend and I are talking, and he mentions how his mom thought I was rude for not coming upstairs to sing happy birthday to the sister. I was confused, and brought up that I offered to come up with him to grab the cake, and also mentioned that his mother has my number, and could have sent me a text asking me to come upstairs to sing happy birthday. We went back and forth, not in an argument, but a discussion, and I eventually let things go. But I'm going to be honest, it kind of hurt to hear that she thought I was being rude. After all of these instances, and a couple more, I recently started making excuses to not drive over to his house because I know I'll have to speak with his mom. I feel like I have to walk on eggshells around her, so I just stopped coming over to their house. Last night, my BF noticed something was wrong, and I confessed to him that I was avoiding his family because of his mom's past behavior. My BF said that his family feels the same way about me because my mood is always up or down. While I do have bipolar disorder, I've always made an effort to put on a smile for his family. The second I come over to their house, I always check the living room to say hi to them because his mom and dad are usually there, and I have a nice conversation with them before going down to my BF's room. Another thing my boyfriend brought up was that his parents are concerned with him giving me money to pay my bills. It's something I'm very embarrassed about, and I've told him to save his money multiple times, and he gives it to me anyways. I work 2 jobs and go to college full-time and try to pick up shifts as much as I can without making my grades slip. I've been searching for jobs for months and haven't had much luck, and I've been very vocal about it with both my boyfriend and his parents. My BF suggested going door to door to different jobs, and I did, and every place I went in person told me to apply online, or they gave me a pamphlet with a QR code to scan to apply. My BF said his parents are concerned that I'm going to grow up and marry their son and mainly rely on his income. To me, that doesn't make sense. I'm currently in college full-time to hopefully get a degree. I've been very vocal about getting my master's to his parents to do my dream job, and it hurt that they viewed me as a leech in his life. I tried to defend myself and see things from my BF's point of view, but I told him I needed space from him and his family, and we haven't spoken since last night. Please tell me if I'm in the wrong. I love this man and I want to be with him so badly, but I don't know what to do. I also wanted to mention a couple of other things that have happened between me and his family. I used to joke to my boyfriend that we should get married on the spot, and his mom went behind my back and asked him about it. He explained to her that it was just a joke, but she expressed concern because neither of us are financially stable. My boyfriend asked me to stop making these jokes around his mom, and I agreed to. Another thing that happened was about my mental health. I've always struggled with it, and at one point I told my boyfriend I planned to end my life after our 1 year, and he was upset about it. He wanted to take me to the hospital, but I convinced him to take me after our 1-year celebration, and he did. After our 1 year, my mental health continued to decline, and he ended up driving me to the hospital, which I appreciated, but he brought his mom with him because he couldn't handle this alone. I understand that it's upsetting to see your partner so low, but after everything that has happened between me and his mom, I didn't want her there to see me at my lowest, but my boyfriend convinced me to let her come. I also want to note that my boyfriend has never paid for anything college-related. I relied mainly on my savings account and financial aid. I really want to know if my thoughts and feelings are justified, and if my relationship is saved able. So, am I the AH? OP is not the AH. She's navigating her own mental health challenges and anxiety, and while her boyfriend's family has valid concerns, her discomfort around them is understandable. However, avoiding communication and not addressing issues directly with them is problematic. No scores, just encouragement to communicate and resolve issues directly. What do the MacReddit fans think? Is the OP an AH or not? Let me know in the comments section below. Now, if you like the stories I brought you, just hit the like button, share them as much as you can, and don't forget to subscribe to MacReddit for a daily dose. Bye-bye. See you tomorrow with some more spicy fries.